Welcome in to the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by Bet365. We got Big E and Rudo coming to you live. Hope everyone had a happy holiday, or if you don't celebrate, happy whatever it is you were doing. Avs are coming to the end of their Christmas break, sort of. They play one game tomorrow and then get another 3 days off before playing Winnipeg on New Year's Eve. So kind of a low, slow point in their schedule. Certainly feels like it after the absolute slog that was most of November and December for this hockey team. I wanted to start by asking you this question. We're, 36 games into the season right now? We talked through the first 20, 25, maybe even the first 30 about how the Avs just needed to survive. They needed to get through it. They needed to keep themselves in a decent position. Feels like they've done that, especially with their winning streak heading into this holiday break. They're 5 games above 500 now, or is it 6? I forget. I'll have to go look. Either way, my question is, how long can the Avs wait until they really start to put the pedal all the way down for the gas? Can they go another 5-10 games? Do they need to do it right now? Can they? What's the feeling like? Is there a little bit of pressure to finally turn up the wick for this team, or can they kind of keep just slowly inching in the right direction?
That's a great question. Great question. But I feel as a player, Avs on the side right now. Don't worry about the Avs right now. I think as a player, I think it's always important to get off to a good start. There's that old saying that, you don't make the playoffs in October, but you sure can get yourself pretty much out of it by then, right? We all know that saying. And then there's the American Thanksgiving saying, if you're in, then usually you're in, right? Give and take, those little barometers, those little targets. I think as a player, when you get to the holiday break, end of December, the new year, I think it's always – there's targets as a team, there's targets as a individual. You know what I mean? I think that if your team has started out of the gate correctly, which we all know that wasn't the Avs case, then usually you can cruise a little bit. Then usually you try to righten the ship a little bit. It's a long year. 82 games is a long year. I think everybody's got expectations that you want to go out there and win every night. We all know that's impossible. And we've seen it over the years, like teams that have cruised through the regular season. Look at Boston a couple years ago. Look at Tampa 4 or 5 years ago. And you don't really face any adversity. It's the old cliche. But it does matter because every group is always different. Yeah, your core group is the same for the Avalanche, but every group is kind of the same. It's never really the same 20, 23 players. So I think you'll learn as a group how to, go through things and go through adversity and go through the clouds. And I think as an individual, same thing. You that target is the holiday break. It's the new year. If you haven't had a good start, then it's like, you know what? You had a couple days to hang out with family, and it's always like looking the same. You come back refreshed, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to go have fun or whatever it is that I need to change. Or you're really flying, and it's like keep doing what you're doing. But I do believe the target is the holiday break because then you can put things aside. And I think as a team, they're going to start addressing that this week, probably saying, like we just talked about, 3 days off, that absolutely nothing, or 4 days off for the Avs, and then that ridiculous moronic game tomorrow. You know what I mean? They fly the same day. Whatever. It is what it is. I mean, I don't know. Flip a coin. You don't know what to expect. And then you got 3 days where they're going to touch on some stuff. They're going to get a couple practices in there for sure, which they haven't really had good and big practices at all the last few weeks for all the purposes of the schedule, purposes of guys being sick, purposes of injuries. So I do believe that it is important, and I think it is a target. And I think you want to start putting the pedal to the metal right now as a team and as individuals and as lines or combos or whatever it is, that what works, what doesn't work. And I think that you're going to start seeing a little bit of that here. And obviously, if you're getting few bodies back, we all know there's maybe a couple bodies like Josh and Joe Druin that could be back. I think the other ones are more long term. But I think once you see that, knock on wood, you're not dropping anymore. You're going to start to see some combos or trying to see, and we all know they've played like what, 55 guys the last 2 weeks on that fourth line. So I think they're starting to figure out, like, okay, what do we like? What don't we like? And I think you start putting the pedal to the metal to answer your original question.
I ask because I think it's certainly true of the fan base. I think the Avs fan base is super tired of adversity at this point. I think we're tired of, maybe more so even than the adversity, the false starts from the Colorado Avalanche this year. We've seen multiple stretches where they rattle off 3, 4, 5 wins in a row, and then it's 2 steps back. They lose 3 in a row. They can't put together the real 8-2, 9-1 style stretch. Now, they went 7-3 in their last 10, so they actually have had a pretty good stretch here. But it feels rocky still at times for Colorado. Certainly, I've multiple times gone on this show and on my reviews and said, hey, this feels like the Avs are finally turning the corner this year, only for it not to be true. So what would it take for you to really feel like the Avs have turned the corner on their season at this point?
Okay, so fair remark by you. I agree with you because we think the same, you and I anyway, and then we're always like, oh yeah, okay, here it is. You know what I mean? And I've said it before and I'll say it again. I do believe that 10-game segment is coming. You know what I mean? And every year they do hit it. Not just the Avalanche, but any winning team usually hits it. You know, that's kind of what puts you in there. I do believe the Avs were close a couple times. I do believe they didn't have a couple elements. A couple elements that were not in their favor to hit that run. First and foremost, not going back to it, goaltending just wasn't there. Now it's there. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm saying, okay. Like, I feel pretty good because you're not always going to be on top of your game as a goalie, but mostly as a team. It's just not going to happen. So I think goaltending is when you see when they pick up the mess, when they give you a win. Like we've seen a couple times the last couple weeks, right? Where they weren't at their best, but goaltending was solid, gave them the win. I think that will propel them to that 10-game segment. And then, second of all, and I hate to bring it back up again because I'm quite frankly tired to talk about it because it sounds like I'm a whiner and it's an excuse. The schedule. The schedule was not in their favor. It just wasn't. And it's been pretty hectic, not just this past month, but overall, especially when you mix that in with the injuries that we talked about, and then the handcuffs from the summer with the Val situation and the Gabe and all that kind of stuff. So I think that the Avs, not surprised they haven't hit it, but I do believe they will hit it. You know what I mean? And I think it's coming because I think once everything kind of it starts rolling together, and it starts with goaltending, and then the special teams, and then it moves on to the combos and then the decor, and then knock on wood injuries. I think you're going to see something coming up here with the Avs where all of a sudden you want to hit playoffs when you're just going full steam. You don't want to be full steam in September, October, it can be a September, but October, November, when all of a sudden you hit one of those patches right before playoffs and you think you can turn it on. Usually you can't. I don't know why. It's not on purpose, but I think you want to be going on all cylinders. And I think you'll talk about it. You're going to hear him talk about it, Bednar being him, about the habits, what you and I talked about last show about the habits. And I think championship habits are so different. They're so different than just a regular team. The San Jose Sharks, for example, no offense to the Sharks, but it really doesn't matter if you turn up a puck at a blue line here coming up on February 12th for the San Jose Sharks. Where for the Avalanche, it does matter. So I think you're going to see a big turn there when it comes down to tighten the screws, coaches and staff and all.
I want to bring up a couple of statistics here, and Eric, I know you're not the biggest guy at looking at other teams' records and standings and things like that, but looking at the Avs' direct competition in Minnesota, who sits ahead of them in second in this Central Division.
Yeah.
Minnesota's 4 points ahead of the Avs with a game in hand. So even if you give them the win in that game in hand, it's 6 points, which isn't great. You'd like to be ahead or closer to them. But when you look at their actual records, the Avs are 21-15, and Minnesota is 21-10-4. They've won the same amount of games, and Minnesota has only lost one game less than the Avs. Now, Minnesota has done a better job of losing in overtime, and that's why they're ahead. But when you look at the actual ability for these teams to win hockey games, they're the same. They're on the same level. And Minnesota has come back down to earth over their last 10 and all of that.
Yeah.
But these were teams that we were talking about at one point 12, 14, 16 points ahead of the Avs earlier in the year. And the Avs have already clawed back a lot of that space. I think it's important to note that because, yes, they still have work to do, but it's not the mountain that they had to climb like it was earlier this year.
Yep, you're bang on. And I'll be the first one to admit it. And I know our chat's not in love with Minnesota Wild, right? For all the reasons. I get it. And AJ hates them. And, that's all good. Our boy AJ. But for me, I'll admit it. Put in the Western Conference. Eastern Conference will be the Washington Capitals. But for me in the Western Conference, that's my surprise. I think that it's, for me, I did not expect that. I did not expect that team to be where they are, even having hit that little bit of a slump, like you just said, in the last 10 games. You got to give credit where credit's due. A couple of reasons. I think that there's a strong belief in that room that they feel that they can win. And I think it was kind of brought in with the attitude of, who cares what people think of us, like myself, like yourself. Well, we didn't have them really as high as, they are now. And I think that Kaprizov is playing on top of he's as good as he's ever been right now, Kaprizov. And that shows you what superstars can do in this league to teams. I do believe, and I don't know him, besides playing against him and see him down the street, I would say hi. But I don't know him more now. But I'm very impressed with Bill Guerin. I think he's got a different approach. I think you can tell this guy's won. He's won at a young age in the National Hockey League, and he's won in a couple places. And I think his approach is more, it's a combo of old school and new school, and he's witty and funny. You know what I mean? And I do believe that he brings that mentality there. Obviously, they changed coaches last year, and I think that, I don't know, he brings a little bit of swag right now to his step, and I think it just trickles all the way down to the coaching staff, to the players. It seems like that team's having fun. I think having fun is very important. I think it's important to be serious. I think it's important to be dialed in. But I think that team's really having fun. But you're right. The margin and the difference in this league is so freaking thin. You know what I mean? Yep. You're talking about a couple games where the Avs could have lost. Bring it to OT or score, or you know what I mean. Don't give up a lead, which is rare, but whatever the circumstances are, and then you take it to a shootout or to an overtime, and that's the difference. But yeah, you're right. I mean, do I look at it? No. Do I know where they are? Yes. You know what I mean. So I think as a player, you kind of know where teams are. You have targeted a couple games coming up, that are games against teams like that, because you're assuming that they'll still be doing good, and then you'll be doing good. Then you target those games. I think you asked me the other day. I sent it to you. I really thought that they would. Actually, I didn't pick them to go down. I picked Winnipeg to kind of go down in the standings, and I'm going to stick to that. Obviously, they're a bit of a heater again right now, but I still pick Minnesota to keep surging. And I still believe in the Avs to keep surging. I even though I like Winnipeg, it's a good team. It's just a hunch. I do believe that they slide behind those two, and that's just what I'm going to stick with. But it's great hockey in the Central Division this year. It's great hockey.
A couple more quick stats. I don't know that I would call them Minnesota overtime merchants, but they do have less regulation wins than the Avs. Minnesota just 17 regulation wins. The Avs have 18. So the Avs have done a good job of when they get to overtime, they win. They do deserve some credit there. It's interesting. You look down the list a little bit. You have teams like Utah who really, really push that overtime merchant. Utah just 11 regulation wins this year as one of the teams trying to chase down the Avs. So some interesting stuff there. Also, time to celebrate, not just the holidays, but for the first time this season, the Avs have a positive goal differential of +1.
I saw that last year.
So that's a
Hey,
thing.
that's a feat. That's a big feat coming with where they came from. That's
Yeah, they're in the green, baby. Eric, do you know who the sexiest hockey players are?
Well, Ryan O'Byrne used to be called Big Sexy. So,
Well,
former Avs.
incorrect. The sexiest hockey players are the ones that go to Sexy Pizza.
That's right.
Make sure you get yourself to Sexy Pizza, or if you can't make it down to Sexy Pizza will have their pizzas at all of our remaining tailgates for the Broncos this season, which there's only 2 for the regular season, more if they make the playoffs, obviously. But make sure you get down to those, and make sure you're checking out Sexy Pizza. Of course, they've been crafting their hand-tossed deck oven pizzas from scratch. They do it all, including the dough and the sauce. All of it straight up scratch. And they offer fundraiser days throughout the year as well, where they donate 15% of their total net sales from one of our locations to the highlighted group for the specific date. They cover everything, whether it be elementary school sports or other local sports teams. Not even necessarily sports teams, but individuals like sports like tennis and things like that. So make sure you check out Sexy Pizza and support your local. You can take a look at their everyday specials because they sell slices all day, every day, and their base special comes with a fountain drink. But if you go to a location that sells alcohol, you can upgrade that thing to a beer. So jump in. DNVR fans get 15% off when they use code DNVR15 online or in store with Sexy Pizza, serving sustainability, community, and hand-tossed pizza in Colorado. And if you're going to Sexy Pizza or one of our tailgates, make sure you're doing it in style with a Toyota. Jump on with a Toyota. They have a vehicle for everyone. 17 different all-wheel drive vehicles to get you where you're going, as it's finally starting to get a little bit colder. And I don't know, it's been a really tepid winter, I'm not going to lie. But I'm sure the snow will sneak up on us as it always does here in Denver. So make sure you're ready to go with that. Also, if you're just on your daily commute, they have 16 different hybrid vehicles over at Toyota. So jump in with your Front Range Toyota stores, including AutoNation Toyota, Raplin, Centennial, Corin Toyota, Boulder, Groove Toyota, Littleton, Mount States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota is the official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche and the official vehicle of DNVR. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast, and I wanted to pull up the Avs' next 5 on the schedule here because I know I said it's time for the Avs to make hay. I know that's the conversation we're talking about, but really, this next stretch of games is a bit weird. You have the Utah game tomorrow, which is the free win for Utah that the NHL gives them. It was Arizona every year, where the Avs travel the same day, and it's a very weird game. And then you have 3 days off, and then you have the New Year's Eve game against Winnipeg that the Avs play every year, which they tend to get trounced by Winnipeg in. So the next 2 are actually pretty tough. After that, things start to get a little bit better. You get a Buffalo team, which finally got the monkey off their back right before the break there. And then you get a Montreal team that has struggled this year before taking on the defending Cup champs in Florida, who managed to beat earlier. But the big news here, when you look at this stretch, 4 games in a row at home. It's been a while.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's when you that's why it was important to win that December 27th, it's not 27th, the 23rd there, the last game against the Kraken. I think it was important because it sets the table. Like you said, forget about that game tomorrow. Who knows? I don't know what you're going to get. But then it sets the tone for 4 games in a row at home before hitting the road a little bit and then coming back for, I think, 5 in a row at home, whatever it is, or 3 or 4 in a row. But it's important because, 4 again. So, again, the record at home basically is 9-8 right now. It was 8-8 before last game. We talked about it in the pregame show. It's important to make hay at home because you can get into a rhythm that if you look at the dates there, it's very simple. As you play every other day, which is nice right there. There's no back-to-back. It's a fairly easy schedule starting with, 4 days off, 1 game, 3 days off after the 27th, and then you're playing every other game. Yes, it will be grueling at times. Yes, it is a crazy condensed schedule because of the 4 nations in February. Everyone goes through it, not just the Avalanche, but everyone. But what comes up must come down, right? So the Avs have played a lot of road games early in the season, so they're going to get a lot of home games coming up. You know what I mean? And I think it's important to get into a rhythm. It's important to get a little bit of sleeping in your own bed. It's important to get just into your routine that's at home. It's so much nicer than traveling all the time and getting off planes and buses, and that's how you get sick. And we all know what happened with the Avs last week and the last 2 weeks. So I think it's a nice 5-game stretch coming up here. I do believe in the Avs. I believe in this team. I believe in some bodies coming back that will make a difference. So it's going to be nice to see what the Avs are made of, which I do believe they're made. They're the real deal. They're made out of real stuff, and they've proven it. And then it's just a matter of proving it right now with this group of guys. Obviously, the core being the same, management being the same, coaches being the same. Now it's a matter of finding the right mix and maybe adding to the mix, once trade deadline comes around.
I will say for this next stretch, the travel is a lot better for the Avs too.
Yeah.
Obviously, we showed you out through their next homestand here. They follow that up. They have a back-to-back, but it's Chicago, Minnesota. Not a super far road travel for the back-to-back. After that, they play Winnipeg. Just a quick little jump up from Minnesota for that. Then they get 2 days off before coming back home. So it's not the just grinding you into the dirt schedule. You were right, actually. It is 5 games in a row at home there.
5, yeah. Okay, that's right.
Yeah. After that homestand, 2 days off before heading out on the road again. And then it's Boston and both New York teams. So through December, even their road games, you're not talking about flying all over the country. You're flying to your destination, and then you do a couple of stops in region instead of these massive, as you put them, the time zone travels.
Yeah, and it's like, believe it or not, like it's just like, I understand they fly private, but it's buses and it's lobbies, and it's you're just chasing it. You're just chasing trouble. That's what you're doing. You're not in the confine of your own dressing room, your confine of your own bed, your own car. You're always chasing, and you're always like wondering what time it is because you're in a different time zone and which hotel room you're in. It's just a different. I'm all for the road. I love it. I loved it. I thought it was awesome. I think it's very important for a team for gelling purposes and all that kind of stuff. But it's also important to be home and to get your mind off of hockey at times. I feel that on the road sometimes can be a little bit tough because you're just always with the fellas. You're always on the bus. You're always in the locker room. Where at home, you escape it a little bit. You go to if you're married or if you're, you have kids or, I mean, you just kind of escape it a little bit. It's just kind of nice. It's nice to do something with friends. If you're not married, you might have some friends in town. And I remember we had friends from town and guys, girls. I'm not saying no girlfriends. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying just local friends and just to go play billiards or do something. You know what I mean? It's kind of fun to just get away a little bit from hockey all the time. I think it's very important to be dialed in, but also important to back off a little bit. And I think at home you get to do that a lot more than if you were on the road.
I think there are 2 elephants in the room on this next stretch that one of them I think we've talked about, one of them we have not talked about as much. The first one in the Avs home record, currently 9-8. It has to get better, right? It just has to be better than that.
And again, I don't know why. It just seems to flip-flop at times. Oh, they're great on the road. Then at home's not very good. Then they're great great at home, not really good on the road. Yeah. I think the schedule had a little bit to do with it and the injuries the start of the year. So I think it's not fair to judge how they've been. But I think it's mental. Again, I said it 5 minutes ago. They were 8-8. You lose that game to Seattle, you're 8-9. It's just mental. You're like, are you serious? We're still chasing. You know what I mean? Then you win one, then you lose one. You're back. It seems like it's just a never-ending chase. But if you do and make hay and it sets up very nice where you can win 3, 4, 5 in a row at home, then you're never looking back. No one ever brings up, oh, I'm not that good at home, and So I think it's important. I do believe that the Avs are not even a matching team, really, when you think about it. I think Bednar kind of worries about his own team. He's not really some teams are some coaches are so gung-ho on matchups and, like every 4 seconds. And I just believe it takes away from the flow of your own team. I do believe it takes away from the momentum of a game. And I do believe that at home, it's even more important to be a little more loose that way, where you're not so overthinking it, because then you can really take away from your superstars, really, because they're the ones that you're really trying to match up right from. And if you're
Yep.
smart, then on the other team, then you just put your fourth line every. Then your superstars will never play, so it doesn't work that way. But I wish, as a fellow fourth liner, it would work that way, but it just doesn't. But I just feel that I think you want to make Ball Arena a tough place to play. I think it is a tough place to play for all the reasons. I think you want to go in there and you're like, oh, that's a tough 2 points that we're going to pick up tonight. And I just, it hasn't really been that way. You know what I mean? When you think about it, when you're 9-8, obviously it hasn't been that way. No one's really been scared, but you want to make sure you bring that back up, and you have plenty of time here before playoffs, because home ice in the playoffs, it's very important. And then you're going to tell me, yeah, but if you don't win on the road, it's tough to win. I agree. I think playoffs, you got to be able to win at both places. But also, I do believe if you do have home ice for Game 7, it does make a difference. I don't care what people say. Stats show that. I do believe at home, if you can get the right game in front of you and the crowd gets behind it, I do believe that you can get momentum from being at home on a Game 7.
Historically, at least with this core, I should say, the Avs have been incredibly elite at home, like ridiculously elite at home. We're talking about multiple years where the Avs had less than 10 losses at home. It's unlikely that the Avs get there this season with 8 losses at home already. But we've seen so much better from this team on home ice for this core. And look, again, Eric said it, there's a lot of context there. It's records can be deceiving when you don't take the context of what the Avs had to deal with, especially for the first 20 games of this season. Call it 15, because Val came back at Game 17, I think. So that was really when you started feeling like the Avs were starting to get a little bit healthy again. But yeah, there is something that matters there. And I think that's important to consider with the second elephant that I wanted to talk about here, which is their record against the Central Division. The Avs are just 3-5 so far this year against the Central Division. And yeah, the game against Utah tomorrow is tough. There are a lot of excuses there, but the Avs have to start doing a better job of winning intra-divisional games, I think is the correct term. These are now teams that you are directly competing for playoff spots for. Utah is 4 points behind you. Excuse me. That snuck up on me. Thank you. Utah's 4 points behind you with 2 games in hand. That's a huge 4-point game for establishing yourself. I know it's not technically the second half of the season, but heading into the second half of the season. Winnipeg, if you have any dreams of chasing them down at the top of the division, you have to win all of your remaining games against Winnipeg. You have to convert on those 4-point games. And there are a lot of important Central Division games, not just the Utah and Winnipeg games coming up. That first road trip of January, it's Chicago, it's Minnesota, and it's Winnipeg. So that's 3 Central Division teams there. On your homestand after that, you get Dallas, you get Minnesota again, and you get Winnipeg again. So there are a bunch of big games against Minnesota and Winnipeg specifically coming up that the Avs, realistically, you can't expect them to convert them all, but they have to convert a lot of them.
And I think they will do well, just because of the fact that the schedule sets it up pretty nicely for them, because they're playing so many home games, and you get into a rhythm, like I said. Again, I didn't do that research, what I'm going to say next, but maybe you look at the Central Division games, and where one of those stupid games or coming back from a road, I don't know, I'd have to look back, where they schedule games that I call where you're like, oh my God, that was just like, wow, that was a stupid game, or where their lineup was absolutely depleted. Or was it on a back-to-back? Or which we all know the Avs do well on a back-to-back. But you know what I mean? There's got to be reasons sometimes why your slot was goaltending absolutely just awful. You know what I mean? That game. So there's a lot to look into. It'd be fun to look at when we hang up there when we're done. I'll look back and look just to see, just because I'm trying to see if my point is valid or I'm talking through the air, but. Yeah, I think it's important. I think it sets up nice, like you said, coming up, and especially if you're getting reinforcements, and especially if you're not losing bodies like they were at the start of the first 25 games, whatever it was. And like you said, Val came back, Lecky came back. Those are secondary guys that make a big difference in a lineup, and obviously the core guys, they're superstars, and you said that core has been good, you know, in their lifetime as a core together.
Yep.
About things like, and they are, because they're so good. And if you're at home, usually you're one of the best players in the league. You should be able to. I think it's human nature. It's not even line matching, but they keep their fourth line out there, or whatever. It doesn't have to be an icing. I'm talking about you just all of a sudden come back with power, and you should be able to destroy those guys because you're that much better. Those are elite players. We say it all the time, and I go back to it. Top 10 players in the league. We have 3 of them. How lucky are we?
Yep. It must be nice. I do want to talk about some of those players, but before we do, let's pay some bills here. As look, World Juniors starting right now. You know how it is. It's that time of year. World Juniors, or juniors in general, it's about building a good foundation, building a good floor, as you could say. And that's where Empire Today comes in when it comes to your flooring. Make sure you get with them at empiretoday.com/DNVR, and you'll get $350 off your new flooring with Empire Today. They only carry the best products when it comes to Empire Today. They don't carry all the cheap stuff that you don't actually want, whether it's hardwood, tile, or carpet, you name it, Empire Today has you covered. They also use professional installers, and you can even get their virtual floor designer online, so you don't have to go in store. You don't even have to talk to anyone if you're a millennial like me and you don't want to do any of that. You can just do it online. You can measure out your room and see what it looks like in there for you. If you do want to talk to someone, you can schedule a free in-home estimate at any time. Again, at empiretoday.com/DNVR. Of course, more details there, and get your $350 off when you use Empire Today. And once you've got your flooring all sorted out, make sure you're also living well. Get with Live Well today. All they want to do with Live Well is make sure everyone has access to cannabis. And they have 25 different locations here in Colorado to help you do that. You can go into any Live Well location and you'll get hooked up with their staff. They're great at what they do. If you know what you're doing, you can just go in there and grab whatever products you like. But if you're maybe not so sure, they'll be able to talk you through everything they have, whether it's joints, whether it's flour, whether it's topicals, whether it's gummies, whether it's any other product. You name it, they have you covered with Live Well. So get over to Live Well today. You can go to livewell.com to order your options for in-store pickup. And when you get in store, mention code DNVR25 for 25% off one regular priced item. Of course, restrictions do apply, but make sure you're living well. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Before we move on to some of the individual players for the Avalanche, I did just want to wrap up that last thought. Look, context matters. Reasons matter, as Eric's talking about with what the Avs going through. I will say, I think they matter a whole lot more in the first half of the season. You get into the second half of the season, nobody cares how hurt you are. Nobody cares what your team situation is. It's time to start winning, and it's time to start putting yourself in a position to succeed if you haven't done that already. And the Avs haven't, even if there are valid reasons for that, but they have to do it now. There is no, oh, well, these guys are hurt. Oh, well, this is a problem with the team. Yeah, solve those problems or be better than them. That's what's left for the Avs.
That's a great point. I totally agree with you, and that's why you got to be going into the second half really pointing in the right direction. There's no switch to turn on, and if you're struggling and if there's excuses that are there, then you got to figure out, then you got to make changes or whatever it is. You got to pull trade deadline acquisitions, whatever it is that you got to do. There's mechanisms in place there for you to go and get. But you're right, there is no excuses. And that's why it starts with the simplicity of a game and your habits and all that kind of stuff. And there's no more. Somebody talking about Cal Ritchie tonight playing at World Juniors, awesome. But remember, there was a little bit of teaching in the start of the season, and a lot of new bodies and new people, and you're trying to teach everybody like how to play. You're on the back end of the season now. There's no more excuses. There's no more like, oh, it's a teaching moment. You don't learn lessons. You should know by now. And I think it's just that the mentality that you got to go out there and be perfect. That's the mentality you need to be. And there's no excuses. Excuses go out the window. Even though you're never going to hear the guys say excuses, you can tell sometimes in their answers. They're just like I'm doing, like the past 30 minutes about the schedule and everything. You're just kind of, it's a fact, and you know what I mean. But I do believe as a team, as individuals, you really got to move forward here. And you're right, there is no excuses. You really got to jump with both feet in and really attack what's in front of you, what obstacles you might have in front of you, what adversity you'll have in front of you, and there's no excuses. And that's when you know that this is towards the end of the season. There's someone to look forward to, which is the dance at the end. You want to make sure you're in the dance, and then you chase that silver thing. It's awesome.
Since you brought it up, let's sidetrack and talk about Cal Ritchie a little bit and this World Juniors. Look, I talked to a lot of people. A lot of fans are very excited on what Cal Ritchie has done in the OHL this year. He's put up a monster amount of points. He's a ridiculous offensive talent. I don't want to drag you all down. You should be hype on the kid, but to me, Cal Ritchie's point totals are meaningless this year. The kid could put up 300 points or he could put up 12, and that's not what Cal Ritchie's goal should be this year. His goal is to work on rounding out his game. He played NHL games. He knows what it takes to be an NHLer, and we know the problems with his game were not in the realm of offensive production. I'll put it to you that way. So his gains as a player this year, a lot of them aren't going to be on the stat sheet. With that being said, though, for a guy who is in Ritchie's spot this year, how important is a World Juniors like this?
I think it's very important. Very important, because you said it. OHL, great league. That's not the point. And he is above that. He is above that talent that the OHL gives him. Now, there's a lot to be said about going back there and learning to play the right way, learning to be a leader the right way, learning to not cheat the game, which is hard to do sometimes in juniors, because you're told it's not your fault. Hey, go play 40 minutes and make sure you score as many goals as you can so we can pack the stands. That's how it works. That's junior hockey, right?
Yeah.
It's a fact. But I think the World Junior Championship, which started obviously today, again, you can say what you want about it. It's the best. It's in a sense the best peers around the world. Is it like end up being 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever it is, tough games? No, you're getting a couple cupcake games in there. Absolutely. You can't be afraid of the words. No offense to some of those countries, but you're really just playing like against a high school JV team. It's not good. It's just not. You can develop bad habits and you can develop but you want to make sure that it's a platform for you to dominate with the best players in your country. All eyes watching. The whole NHL is watching. All your bosses are watching. Everyone is trying to see where you're at. And there's a leadership factor. And Canada, US, they have the pressure, those types of countries, to be there at the end and to play in those, call it the real games. You know what I mean? The last 2 or 3 games that are real. Before that, it's, again, if you're watching US right now against, no offense to Germany, I mean, it's just not up to snuff to the US or Canada. So you want to make sure that in the big games, the big moments, you are there. Guys have made careers, over the years by being there, meaning like clutch, in those moments. And I think it's very important for Cal's development to go there and play the right way and develop and take out something other than just OHL play. We know that he took out some, 8 or 9 NHL games, I don't remember, but so he's taken a couple months of being in the NHL, what it takes to follow Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar every day. What do they do? What's their regimen like? How do they play? What does Coach Bednar want? And then obviously you go to juniors, and it's not a waste of time. And I understand he is that much better, yes, but it's not a waste of time because you have to go and dominate and be, a leader. I mean, and now the next step is the World Juniors. I think it's a very critical spot for him to be in, and I think it's very important for his season that he does well here these next 10 days or so.
Do you think realistically he can be a black ace for the Avs this year? I'm sure he'll join the team, but is this more of a, hey, you can go play in the Eagles playoffs this year, or will he be a real option for the Avs?
Yeah, I don't know. I think time will tell. I think, we always talk about it in training camp with rookies and stuff, right? It's what's the next step? What's the next step? Oh, like Malinsky 2 years ago. Remember, it's rookie camp, check, done. Oh, training camp, check, done. Oh, preseason game, check, done. Now, regular season game, check. And you have to pass the test. You have to see, and there's got to be a belief too in the coaching staff that they believe where you're at in your game. Can they help? Can he help you? Obviously a high end talent, a little different than a fourth line. Like the show last week, I called them plugs, which is all good. I'm not absolutely bashing those guys. You want to be a good fourth line plug in the NHL. You make a very good living and you can play for 10, 12 years. But he's really not that. He's a different type of player, which sometimes can make it a little bit more difficult to crack a top six, especially when you're in Stanley Cup championship aspiring team like the Avalanche. It's a little bit tougher at times to crack that nutshell, where doesn't mean you won't have a good career. That's not what I'm saying. It's just sometimes you can crack it a little easier in Chicago, for example. You know what I mean? Where, you know what I mean? It's not the same. So I think Cal, we'll see. If he ends up having to play in the American League, I'm me, I say it all the time. I'm a big believer. Everybody should go through the American League. Everybody should play in the American League. I think it's the greatest development league in the world. And I think it's very, very important for players to go down there and perform. And again, check that box, for the next step.
I will say Oshawa is a pretty good team in the OHL as well. They're the top of their
That's
division.
right.
So entirely possible he goes on a deep OHL playoff run and doesn't have a whole lot of time to get up with the bigger clubs. They aren't a top team like Windsor or London though, so we'll see how far Oshawa could go with Ritchie on the team there. A little bit of a tangent there, but I did want to continue talking about some more individual players and talk about sustainability into the second half of the year, because look, we saw it at the start of this year. We knew some things on the Avs were not going to last. Some of that is true. Casey Mittelstadt's hot goal scoring start has fallen off of a cliff, and I think he's one of the guys that a lot of people are asking more out of from Colorado. Realistically, what should Casey Mittelstadt be looking at? What do you want to see out of Casey Mittelstadt in the second half of this season, as we look at a player who right now sits at 23 points in 36 games? So what was a good pace for Casey is starting to fall off a little bit, as at this point, that's a 52-point pace. You'd like to see that get a little bit closer to a 60-point pace, right?
Yeah, and he's had his moments. I think at the start of the season, he did produce, if I go back. And
yeah, he was on fire to start the year, for sure.
And thank God, he was a big reason why they collected some wins. But he didn't have any stability, and I'm not saying, again, that's an excuse. I hate to say that, but it makes it nice when you're used to the guys that you're playing with. You know what I mean? It just makes a difference when you're having a new guy on each side of you every night, and experiments or call-ups or whatever it is or Cal Ritchie or whatever it is. It's just not the same as if you're going out there and you play on instincts, because you've been together for a bit or for so long or whatever, like Nate and Mikko or whatever. It just makes it a little tougher. I do believe he has to change his mentality, and it doesn't mean that you got to change who you are as a player. He just needs to shoot a little more. I think the league now has figured out, after, 6, 7 years he's been around. I mean, give and take. I don't have his stats in front of me, but I think the league has figured out that he doesn't shoot. So it really takes away that threat and it really takes away some options.
Sam Girard was a forward.
Yeah, and I think if you're playing against him, you'll play him differently, thinking that he's not shooting.
Yeah.
So he has to make a play. Therefore, you play it differently, if that makes sense. So I think that he just needs to put the shooting, not that he ever had it, but I do believe he has to put that shooting mentality a little bit. And then he would surprise people, because I'm a firm believer. I'm all for goals on the rush. I'm all for goals created from behind the net and all that. But I do believe that the number one thing in the NHL that you cannot defend, and I'm sticking to it, is a broken play. It just, and usually it comes off a shot. You can't defend that because everybody's twisting, everybody's turning. especially the defenseman, and you're trying to find the puck, locate where it's at. That's when you lose your man, and it just creates chaos. And I do believe that Casey is so good at grabbing pucks in a phone booth and locating the guys. I think it would just give him a little bit more tools in there because he's so talented. He's so smart with the puck. He's so good below the goal line. I do believe he's the best for the Avalanche below the goal line. There's nothing I think compared to him that are close. And I think it would just give him a little bit more confidence, a little bit more jam, a little bit more swag. And again, offensive people, I always say it. It's kind of nice to sometimes find your touch a little bit on the PP. And I think that, I think he got that earlier in the year where he's not getting that as much right now because we all know the Avs PP, they go with those 5. And sometimes he's on it, sometimes he's not on it. I know you're going to say second PP, but I think we all know that second PP plays like on average 6 seconds. So it's kind of hard to if you don't have that clean entry, like you're done. You know what I mean? Your power play's over. So I'm not worried about him, but I think I'm anxious, if that's the right word, for him to get going a little bit more. Like you said, just bring up that pace a little bit where it's a little bit more consistent instead of being really hot. Really, I don't want to say non-existent because it's not fair, but on the score sheet, non-existent, you know what I mean? And then really hot. So I think a little bit more consistency there is going to be helpful for the Avs.
I want to dig into some of those stats, but before we do, you know what time it is. We are brought to you by Coors Light. Go get yourself some Coors Light, or better yet, stay at home and get yourself some Coors Light with CoorsLight.com/DNVR. It's the beer literally made to chill. The mountains turn blue even on the bottle or the can. Go jump on some yourself wherever you are. It's great for just about anything. I don't think anyone's barbecuing here in the winter, but maybe you live somewhere warm. Maybe you're going to a tailgate and you want to jump in with some Coors Light. Whatever it might be, make sure you get with Coors Light today. Again, Instacart, CoorsLight.com/DNVR. You don't even have to get up off your couch to get Coors Light delivered to you, whether it's for an Avs game, Broncos game, whatever it might be. Jump in and choose chill with Coors Light today. Of course, when you do drink, please drink responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. And once you've had your Coors Light, make sure you're also in connection. Can you hear me now, E? Jump in with Verizon, whether E can hear you or not. If you're tired of your phone bill draining your bank account, you wish you could pay that money off for something more fun and exciting, well, Verizon feels your pain. For a limited time, new customers can get up to an $800 in prepaid MasterCard to pay off your current smartphone loan when you switch. That's $800. It's a lot of money, $800. Well, Verizon feels your I would do a lot for $800. Put it to you that way. They also give you the 5G network to power your entire day, and they've got you covered with award-winning network performance. So this deal won't last very long. Make sure you get on it quickly with Verizon. It's $800 when you switch to Verizon today and take control of your game plan. Visit your local Verizon store for details. Last period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast, getting into Casey Mittelstadt. Eric, I think what you mentioned, I want to do a comparison, game-by-game shots of the first 10 games of the season and the last 10 games of the season for Mittelstadt. He started the season, shots on goal per game, 3, 2, 3, 3, 6, 1, 0, 1, 3, 5. That's a lot of shots. His last 10, 0, 0, 0, 0, 2, 0, 0, 0, 1.
Yep.
Pretty blatant difference there. And I understand. You said it. Part of this is he's trying to find his role with what should be some more consistent teammates here. You're getting more shooting out of a guy like Val Nichushkin on that line. You're getting more shooting out of a Ross Colton on that line. Sure. But that should be a difference of going from 4 shots to 2, not 3-4 shots to 0.
And like you said, I love those stats because that he was getting production at the start of the year, where now it's been a little more scarce. With that said, you're playing with Val, Colton, or whatever, guys that are scoring goals at will right now. I mean, both of them have really been hot for the games that they've been in this season. Therefore, you're shooting, again, maybe less on a play, but I do believe, flip the coin here. You're playing with Ross and Val. What do those two guys have in common? They go hard to the net. So it doesn't always have to be a pretty sauce, to one of those two guys to to put the puck in the net. You know what? How about you put the puck on net and you let them
Mhm.
crash the net, put the rebounds in? I'm a firm believer, and I love it. I am not anti. The guys are so skilled nowadays, and especially Casey's probably one of the most skilled guys on this team. Um, I love the skill. You know that those guys are so much better than we were back then. It's amazing what they can do with a stick and a puck. And the creativity is absolutely fantastic. But sometimes there's nothing wrong with the old far pad. You know what I mean? Like putting the puck on the far pad, shooting for a rebound, and let guys that you're playing with that complement you well crash the net and do what they need to do. Sure, it's nice to get a nice saucer and you put it top shelf like Miko did to Kiviranta the other day, which was nice, you know. But you know what? It doesn't always have to be that pretty. You can just shoot far pad, crash the net, and put a first round, second rebound in. And at the end of the day, they count just as much in the stats as they do, and then they count on the scoreboard. And you're going to be a little more productive that way. And I think that's going to be one of the weapons he needs to bring, like he did. Look no further than his first 10 games of the season with the nice stats that you just kindly put out there. I think it's there. When he does it, he has success. So you just got to get back at it.
I wanted to move on from Casey and kind of talk
Yeah.
about the Avs superstars a little bit more because the Avs have 3 players in the top 10 in scoring in the NHL. And look, I don't think anyone doubts any of those guys. Certainly MacKinnon and Rantanen, their production is sustainable. They've proven that year over year that they are these guys. They can produce at this rate. Cale Makar, the top producing defenseman in the league. He's having a career year when it comes to offensive production. An interesting thing about these 3, though, and this is understandable for Makar. This doesn't really apply to him. He has the most goals, tied for the most goals of any defenseman. So the defensemen are a little bit in their own category. But for the goal scoring from the Colorado Avalanche, they've been getting a lot of that by committee this year. When we talk about the Avs, we talk a lot about the number of 10 goal scorers that they have as a team, and that is 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7, because Kiviranta hit 10 the other night. I forgot about that. So 7 with Kiviranta, 10 goal scorers. Do they need more goal scoring? I think specifically out of Nathan MacKinnon. Mikko's fine. He's got 19. He's near the top of the league. But Nathan MacKinnon, his point totals are heavily resting on his assist totals. His assist totals would keep him in the top 30 in the NHL in point production by themselves, but he's outside the top 30 in goal scoring.
I think it's more like I like what you're saying. I think it's more as a group, for example, as a forward group. You can't all go dry at the same time. You know what I mean? And it's hard to plan that. I don't think as a coaching staff you plan that like where these 6 guys are going to go dry here for 7 games and then these guys are going to go hot. Just look no further than Kiviranta. I think he had 4-4 early in the season, and I think he's got 5-2.
Yeah.
So there's a gap in there of like 30 games with no goals, right? You know what I mean? And I like Kibby. I'm not bashing. That's not his job. But when your McKinnons of the world are not putting the puck in the net like you were saying, then it's kind of nice to have the secondary guys like which they've had. But I just feel at times when it's been dry for a lot of people at the same time. And then you obviously you combine that with some poor goaltending. It's tough to get wins. So I think you saw that a little bit earlier in the season. I do believe Mac, if you look back, same thing. He leads the league in shots usually every year. I'm not looking at it, so I'm not cheating. I would have to say he's not near the top right now. I think when he volume shoots, he's
You'd be
he's
wrong.
better. I'm wrong.
He's one of the top shots guys in the league.
All right, and my theory doesn't work because it's usually, when he shoots and he shoots and he shoots and he shoots and usually leads the league or he's top 3 in the league in shots. Then obviously it's the law of averages, and some are going to go in, but maybe it's the way he shoots the puck, maybe the where he shoots it from. That's a little bit different. I don't see him shooting the puck a lot on the power play, and sometimes me, I get mad when he shoots too much on the power play, where all of a sudden I'm like, buddy, you got to move it. But it just feels this year he's not even shooting it ever. You know what I mean? He's always making that little pass. So I do believe maybe it's where he comes from, where his shots come from. But Again, I do believe he's going to see an uptick in his goal scoring in the second
Yeah.
half there.
So this was true earlier in the year, but basically over the past month, he's changed that. On November 27th, he had 10 shots against Vegas. Since then, 5, 7, 9, 3, 6, 4. Over the past month, he's really started shooting the puck a lot more. But I agree. For the first 2 months of the season, he was not shooting it enough. Yeah.
I mean, when you shoot 11, like you said, or 10 or whatever, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's like a month for some guys. You know what I mean? Like, so,
Yep.
so again, look at Casey. I mean, would you say 7 and 10 or whatever it was? I mean, that's one night for Mac. Yeah,
4.
so.
I think it was 4 shots in the last 10. So,
yeah. I like Nate. I like Nate when he shoots it. You're telling me he's still shooting it. But again, maybe it's shooting it more consistently. You know what I mean? Instead of having 2, 2, 2, 11, 11, 11. Let's, and again, circumstances make the game that night. It's hard to plan. I'm going to get 11 shots. I'm going to get 1 shot. Obviously, you play the game that's in front of you. But I like Nate that shoots. I like Nate that's a dog out there and goes. And I do believe that, his shooting percentage will get a little bit higher. I don't even know what it's at right now, but it
10%.
must not be that great. Yeah, so he can get higher.
You get a little higher. I don't think you'll get that.
A little higher. Give him more Genos.
Yeah, I mean, the Avs as a team, shooting percentage is likely to come up a little, unless you're Kiviranta, who's shooting 22%. But everybody else, the shooting percentage is bound to come up a bit. Look, the Avs top 6 is a little bit weird. They're kind of a team of extremes, to be honest with you. MacKinnon, 43 assists, just 14 goals. Makar, 34 assists, 11. Again, he's a defenseman, a little bit different.
Yeah.
Mittelstadt, 16 assists, just 7 goals. Colton, 10 goals, 1 assist. He's winning the Cy Young. Even someone like Nichushkin, 11 goals, 5 assists. Mikko's maybe the most balanced, 19 goals, 33 assists. But it does feel like you're either the passer or the scorer right now in the Avs top 6. There's not a whole lot of intermingling.
It'd be interesting to see all the way till the end of the season to see if it kind of equals out. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
I mean, you would think Ross Colton's going to have more than 1 assist in what is it, 20 games he's played? I know he missed some games,
18,
but he's played at least
19,
18. Yeah. Still, it's 1 assist in 19 games. I mean, that's not a lot. It's like Chris Kreider in New York. You know what I mean? It's like the guy's not getting any assists. It's like weird. I think Ross, it's just circumstances right now, but I do believe it's going to change. He's too involved in a game to have just 1 assist. It's got to be some bad luck in there somewhere.
Yeah,
yeah.
For sure. I fully agree. It's been hectic in the Avs lineup, to be honest. And again, we're past that. The Avs have to find ways to win, sure. But make no mistake, that does affect production in your lineup when you're talking about missing 2, 3, 4 guys in your top 6 at times this year. So keep that in mind. That's all I'll say there. We are winding down here. Randy, I stayed at home with my family, with my dogs. It was a nice, easy Christmas. You too-y?
Yeah, I stayed home. It's rare that the 5 of us are together. We were able to spend like 3 days together. So kind of nice. And mother-in-law's in town too. So nice to, just play some cards. And I'm still defending champ of the house, but not a big deal. And then, of course, a lot of food, but just some fun times together, and no agenda, meaning no schedule, like no, what I mean, just kind of, all right, let's go for a walk. Oh, we actually played soccer, and I really thought there was going to be no participation by my daughter, and we played this crazy game. I'll tell you all about it. It's so fun. But anyway, it was so fun. Like, it was awesome. Even my mother-in-law, and then maybe we had a little bit of a Scott Sterling incident there in the net, but not a big deal. Not a big deal. It was fun. It was awesome time, Randy. Thank you. Hopefully you did too.
As long as the save got made, you're good.
Yeah.
We do have to wrap up there, though, but it's been a nice few days off, recharged, ready to go for another, I guess it's 6 weeks until the Four Nations Cup, whatever you want to call it, Four Nations face-off. Should be fun. Should be a lot of Avs coverage coming your way from us. Tomorrow's game, we will have full pregame and postgame coverage. We might do a sketchy watch along. We'll see. I can have a setup. I don't know how great it's going to be. And then for the New Year's Eve game, we will be back in the bar and we will have a full-on watch along for you. So at very least, we'll be there for you for New Year's Eve for the watch along. We'll also be live Saturday for an additional show. So tune into all that stuff. We appreciate all y'all watching, listening, however you consume the show. We are out of here for today, and we will talk to you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.